Welcome to the headquarters of Prairie Public Broadcasting. Hello, I'm John Harris, President and CEO of Prairie Public, and we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. So come on in and join me as we share a few stories, talk about programs, and show you images of some of the people who helped shape Prairie Public.
This program is funded by the members of Prairie Public.
Dr. Ted Donay, a Fargo radiologist, had a dream in the late 1950s to set aside space on the television dial for educational programming. He called on friends and community leaders to help establish a public television station in Fargo. Dr. Donay's enthusiastic group incorporated as NCETA, North Central Educational Television Association. They formed a board and hired a manager. The board was determined that the station should be an independent community television station and licensed to the corporation. Local Fargo stations hosted the first fundraisers, which were live on-air auctions.
In those days, they had television auctions. He would phone all of the people that he knew in Fargo. They'd deliver things to his house, and his house was filled from door to door. You couldn't even walk through the place with all of these things that were going to be auctioned on the television.
KFME was to stand for Fargo Moorhead Education.
To get the call letters KFME, they were originally owned by a trawler in Alaska, and it took him many telephone calls to locate the guy, and I think it cost him several $1,000s to purchase these call letters too.
On January the 19th, 1964, KFME went on the air from the tiny transmitter building in South Fargo, made available by WDAY, with 5 hours of programming 5 days a week. In 1967, the Public Broadcasting Act was passed, creating the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which provides funds for the educational television stations. However, cash was still hard to come by, and the revenue from member schools did not materialize as planned. At one point in the early 70s, the board voted to close KFME. Newly hired general manager, Dennis Falk, who became the corporation's longest-serving general manager, produced and held the first on-air pledge drive. Viewers responded with $40,000 and the crisis was met.
I worked with Dennis Falk as his executive assistant from 1983 until he passed away in 1993. Dennis had a motto, hire good people and let them do their jobs.
You know, I can't think of a better job that anybody could have in the world.
He had a small staff that was expected to do top-notch work, and he had a gentle way of leading. Dennis was a visionary. He had a dream of building a statewide television and radio network that would provide valuable programming to the people of the Prairie region. He worked tirelessly with the North Dakota and Minnesota legislators, the boards, and his staff so that Prairie Public could fulfill this goal, and his dream eventually came true.
Through a series of grants in 1974, we were able to record and broadcast in color. The grants that came in were one-time only events, usually for equipment, not for daily operation. At the same time, the corporation's name is changed from North Central Educational Television Association to Prairie Public Television. In 1975, the Minnesota legislature allocated funds, and in 1977, North Dakota followed suit. Between 1978 and 1983, the accomplishments were unparalleled. We built 4 more TV stations, relocated one, and when one collapsed in an ice storm, rebuilt that. Built 2 new radio stations, opened our gaming operation, installed satellite receivers, and began a capital campaign, all of this in 5 short years. In 1984, the corporation purchased and began the move into the old WDAY building in downtown Fargo, where we are today. We broadcast a gala event, plus held an open house with tours of the facility for all our members. PBS and Prairie Public Broadcasting started to broaden its reach into information and entertainment programming for the whole family.
When Prairie Public began, the programming was done by hand. Videotape had to be cataloged and stored in a library. All this was accomplished with a typewriter and a filing cabinet. Tapes and a schedule had to be prepared daily for master control. Now we have very little videotape, and what remains is in the process of being transferred to online and portable storage devices.
Let's hear you sing the alphabet.
A, B, C, D, E, F, to Cookie Monster.
The Children's Television Workshop, funded by government and private foundations, produced Sesame Street as an experiment.
Yeah, what?
The show captured the hearts and minds of the nation, and it reshaped the future of public television.
Street, we have everything, and more everything.
Our evening programs included NET Playhouse, The Forsyth Saga,
Nothing but Forsyths, droves and herds of Forsyth.
The Boston Pops, and of course Carl Sagan's Cosmos. There were documentaries like Vietnam and Our World, and programs like Upstairs, Downstairs and I, Claudius, and The French Chef with Julia Child. In the 1970s and 80s, money was still short, but the enthusiasm of our viewers grew.
If it's time to renew, you can renew your membership right now.
I arrived at Prairie Public in the mid-1980s. At that time, finances were a little tight, and we couldn't afford to purchase all of the PBS program offerings. My boss at the time was the television manager, Larry White. He was a genius at finding movies, British and off-network programs at reduced prices. Remember, this was a time when viewers had a very limited amount of channel selections, even on cable TV. Larry found programs like Wild Kingdom for weeknights and great movies on Saturday nights like John Wayne and the Alamo.
There's right and there's wrong. You got to do one or the other.
And Lawrence of Arabia, as well as Elvis specials that garnered huge audiences.
Lord Almighty, I feel my temperature rising.
He was also responsible for bringing EastEnders, cult favorite Dark Shadows, and the ever-popular Lawrence Welk into our public television schedule.
Friends, here's a short preview of this week's Lawrence Welk Show.
It's for the way you look at me.
After a while, he turned the regular scheduling over to me so he could concentrate on his real love, scheduling programs for membership drives. And he really enjoyed creating day-long marathons. I remember that we built a hotel registration desk for our Fawlty Towers Marathon, had hay bales in the studio for the Country Music Marathon, and classic cars and car hops for our 50s Rock Marathon. The marathons were fun for our staff, volunteers, and audiences, and proved to be very successful financially.
Actually, Bruce, we've been paging through this program guide here, and Heidi's been circling the programs that her family likes to watch.
The television shows people watch and how they watch them have changed by leaps and bounds. We now program 4 different channels, and viewers access content on a variety of digital devices. Our lineup includes all your favorites: Antiques Roadshow,
discovering Florida's treasures in
Nova, Nature, Great Performances, Frontline, This Old House, and on Masterpiece, viewer favorites like Sherlock Holmes and Downton Abbey.
What about us? What about our children?
Your front row seat is reserved for concerts from Austin City Limits to live from Lincoln Center. Plus, you might meet a few of the royal family. We dedicated nearly 30% of our schedule to children's programming. We believe that children's television should be positive, safe, educational, and fun to watch. So you see, with your help, we are continuing to fulfill our mission to educate, involve, and inspire.
In 1966, the Hill Foundation provided funds to extend the state education network from Minneapolis to the Fargo-Moorhead area. For the first time, viewers were able to watch national programs live.
Where's all the air that was inside?
It's out in this air now.
Prior to that, programs were either broadcast from kinescope or film. The late 60s and 70s saw new equipment, which improved the look of KFME. In 1974, KGFE Channel 2 in Grand Forks was added, allowing Winnipeg Cable to receive the new signal and extend our broadcast area. With the North Dakota legislative approval for a statewide public television system, a lot happened from 1978 to 1986.
Don was an interesting guy. He was a great engineer and planner. Even though when there wasn't a lot of money, he knew the value of doing things right. He was creative. When building the state network, and that's why I was hired, these days with a spreadsheet would be very easy. But in the days of handwritten calculations and calculators was very tedious. My boss, Don Geiken, had built a computer from a kit, and we used it in the early days to plan the microwave sites that went across North Dakota. We first set out to find locations, driving around North Dakota talking to landowners. We had to get all the way out to Williston, starting from Fargo, and that's a project. And in the midst of that, we started building Prairie Public Radio. We had looked to build a brand new facility, and it just didn't work out. And then this opportunity came up to buy the old WDUI facility in downtown Fargo. We looked at it carefully and found a way to make things fit with modern equipment. And we were able to move from South Fork, we called it, downtown seamlessly overnight without going off the air, and made that transition very nicely.
We were in our new building with updated equipment, but by the turn of the century, this technology was already outdated. The government mandate to change from analog to digital happened quickly. The switch was difficult as we remained on the air throughout the change. In addition to the tower upgrades, each site gained another transmitter and its associated equipment. With 8 locations across the state, this was a long process. Prairie Public also had to upgrade our infrastructure, including new microwave radio relay systems, studio cameras, edit suites, and new master control equipment. We no longer use videotape, and all of our programming is either live or stored and played back from a large computer system. We have more than 100 terabytes of storage for all of our programs.
Prairie Public continued to grow in the 1970s and 80s. Our television service extended to the people of Grand Forks, Bismarck, Minot, Dickinson, and Williston. And Canadian cable companies picked up our signal for audiences in Winnipeg and Brandon. Hours on the air and programming also expanded. As this rapid growth occurred, funding was paramount. On-air membership drives replaced auctions as a revenue resource and became the single most important source of funding for us. The development department was then and is still responsible for Prairie Public's fundraising activities. We wouldn't be able to carry out our fundraising activities and community engagement events without our many wonderful volunteers who generously donate their time and talents to bring our services to the people of the Prairie region. While fundraising was critical to Prairie Public's survival, so too was public awareness and public participation. And in the 80s and 90s, many fresh ideas were introduced.
Hi, welcome to Kids Zone Central, the place where all the real cool things on Kids Zone come alive.
One of the things I loved was helping develop thank you gifts for Pledge. We developed them for ourselves, but found a national market to generate significant new income. One of the highlights was the Lawrence Welk thank yous. Because of our relationship with NDSU and Special Collections, we were able to get access to photo archives that were amazing. We did several calendars. The lemon yellow double-breasted polyester knit leisure suits on the orchestra were a hoot. We also created a set of postcards that were an accordion. They had keys on one end and buttons on the other, so you could play it as you looked at them. We had our own version of Muppets, Abercrombie and Sweet Violet. They were featured on air and also did event and parade appearances all over the region. One summer, I was inside Sweet Violet, riding on a flatbed for a parade, and it is amazing what you can hear. As we passed by the crowd, I saw a little boy, and he obviously knew the characters. He was jumping up and down with excitement and yelling at his mom, "See, Mom, see, I told you they were real."
Public awareness leads to public involvement. For example, thousands of Antiques Roadshow fans brought their treasures for appraisal when the Roadshow visited North Dakota. Prairie Public also offers numerous concerts to members, where they, in many cases, attend a reception to personally interact with the performers. The 50th Anniversary Golden Gala, the Queen Mary II Cruise, and the Prairie Public premieres are just some examples of community engagement. Prairie Public's funding, like its programming, is from a diverse mixture of sources. We are grateful for membership contributions, corporate underwriting, philanthropic gifts, grants, charitable gaming, earned income, and state funding. But community support from individuals and businesses continues to provide our single largest source of revenue.
In November of 1963, an ad hoc school program planning committee met to discuss building an organization to give guidance and direction for the use of educational TV in the classroom. This was the beginning of the independent North Central Council for School Television. Instructional television was a teaching video service that aired programs and classes and showed teachers how to enhance their lesson plans. By 1987, in an effort to make better use of resources, the NCCST agreed to have Prairie Public Television assume administration of school services under their guidance and called it Prairie School Television. In the 90s, one of the first national teachers training institutes, a revolutionary professional development event for area teachers. With monies from the North Central Council for School Television through the North Dakota Legislature, and also later from the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, we were no longer dependent on member schools for revenue. The new century saw Prairie School Television providing resources to nearly 140,000 students, eventually evolving into education services at Prairie Public. Hundreds of teachers and college students have been trained on site at workshops and at statewide conferences on using video and other multimedia resources in the classroom. We offer Share a Story and other family literacy events where we help parents, schools, and their communities to prepare preschoolers for the classroom. Don't let the term education or educational television fool you. When Sesame Street first started, they went under the premise, if you can get their attention, you can teach them, proving that learning can and should be engaging and, quite frankly, fun.
Well, Prairie Public got into public radio in the 1980s. The Red River Valley had public radio, but in the rest of the state, you were hearing public radio when you traveled, but when you got home, you couldn't get it. A group of people in Bismarck started working with Prairie Public. Eventually, they got the funding to match the federal grants to put a station on in Bismarck. Prairie Public got Edie Jost to take charge of getting the station on the air, and from what I've heard, she was about the best person in North Dakota for the job. Well, with support from the listeners and federal grants and the state matching, Prairie Public kept adding radio transmitters. Now there are very few places in North Dakota where you can't get us. The 30th anniversary was 2011. The undoubted celebrity of the evening was news director Dave Thompson, partly because in 1981 he had been the first voice on the air.
I joined the staff of Prairie Public Radio back in 1981, 2 months before the station went on the air, July 2nd to be exact. And the staff was pretty excited about going on there. We were also a bit nervous because we had naysayers who were saying, Western North Dakota will never support a public radio station, you'll never raise any money. But thanks to our station manager, Edie Falk, we proved them wrong. Also, Edie was bound and determined to meet the September 1st deadline, even though CPB was telling her nobody ever makes that deadline. Well, by gosh, we made the deadline. At 5:27 a.m., September 1st, 1981, we signed on the air, on time. Well, I can't really say that on time because I screwed up, I pushed the wrong button. We were a couple minutes late, but we finally did get on the air.
For Prairie Public, a big change on the radio side was when we agreed to go together with UND and NDSU to form a statewide network. That was in 1999. It's a partnership, and the way it's set up was cutting edge. Prairie Public, NDSU, and UND all still hold their broadcast licenses, but Prairie Public, as the operating partner, runs it as a statewide network. So we've got all these transmitters and streams. What do we put on them? Well, music is still a big part of what we do. Classical is on the most transmitters, the most hours, but there's also roots, rock and jazz, blues, folk, and Latino, quite a range. The other big part of our programming is news and information. Of course, we carry the NPR programs like Morning Edition and All Things Considered, and then we add elements to them, interviews, weather, news that are produced here at Prairie Public.
16 sites were tested.
This news and information programming has our biggest audience. The founders of Prairie Public would be rightly proud of what the radio service has accomplished, thanks to our listener support.
We're in one of the edit bays here at Prairie Public. Production equipment has sure come a long way since 1964. But even back then, we were dedicated to producing original programs that illuminate and reflect the areas that we serve and live in. Soon after our sign-on and with extremely limited resources, the station produced our first program in series called The Art About Us. It was followed by Red River Land and then the award-winning Children of the Dark. Local political debates and public affairs shows also were part of our early programming. And in the 1970s, with the creation of PBS and the infusion of U.S. federal dollars, hours devoted to the production of programs in these and other areas really took off.
More local programs followed in the 1970s and early 80s. Spin, Skylines, a long-running series of interviews of North Dakota notables in Boyd Christensen Interviews, and the news review program North Dakota This Week, which were weekly panels of the state's leading news editors and journalists. Free Space gave local people a voice, the opportunity to air their own opinions in a half-hour program. And Peek at the Week, a community arts calendar, began.
More and more people are using their vacations to go backpacking.
An all-volunteer crew and talent did the production. They won a PBS award for their efforts. Prairie Public was like a big family. Everybody helped out during pledge. Everybody volunteered their time. And our own families got involved, including my son and daughter.
The dawn of the 1990s brought us some new field gathering and editing equipment, and also some new production opportunities. A federal grant through the Department of Agriculture allowed us to begin a stream of program series focused on small business growth and development. Another federal grant from the Department of Education spawned the birth of Hablemos Español, a live interactive Spanish language show designed to provide high school level Spanish instruction to rural students. It was delivered by satellite to classrooms all across the U.S. Veteran North Dakota newsman Darrell Dorgan became part of Prairie Public and produced and anchored Prairie News Journal, a weekly news magazine designed to keep people across our huge coverage area informed about what was happening in each other's backyard. Prairie Public's coverage area includes North Dakota and most of Manitoba and western Minnesota. In the mid-1990s, we began to move our concentration away from series production and into more what we call one-off documentary production. This allows us to produce more programs related to all parts of our region. To list all of the programs we have produced in the past 50 or even 20 years and the people who made them would take more time than we have for this entire program. However, I would like to mention some of the community partners that have helped us produce our award-winning original programs. The North Dakota State University Library's Germans from Russia Heritage Collection has been our partner on 8 documentaries profiling one of North Dakota's largest ethnic groups. The Energy and Environmental Research Center at the University of North Dakota has worked with Prairie Public to produce numerous programs related to energy issues. The Bremer and Bush Foundations have been partners on original programs from our beginning, including Plains Talk and the groundbreaking Riverwatch. The North Dakota Department of Transportation worked with us on a major project that resulted in a documentary, website, and concert related to the Old Red Trail. Ducks Unlimited US and Ducks Unlimited Canada have worked with us to produce programs on wetland conservation. The Winnipeg Foundation has been involved in funding many programs related to Manitoba, including documentaries by Winnipeg native George Siamandis, who has collaborated with us on projects since the early 1990s. Beginning in 2010, funding from the Minnesota Heritage Fund has allowed us to produce a steady stream of programs about Western Minnesota's arts, history, and culture. The North Dakota Humanities Council and the North Dakota Council on the Arts have been partners on collaborative projects like Read North Dakota and individual projects like the Emmy Award-winning documentaries Homesteading and A Considered View. Currently, Prairie Public's original productions include Prairie Pulse, Prairie Musicians, and Prairie Mosaic, as well as many productions without Prairie in the title. Most of our productions have educational materials and websites that enhance the viewing and learning experience. We are also proud of the fact that we continue to produce the nationally distributed Painting with Paulson series, now in its 15th season. Prairie Public produces high-quality, award-winning original programs that are viewed across our region, across North America, and across the world on the internet. The one thread that all of our original programs have since our inception is that none of them would be possible without the support of the members of Prairie Public.
Well, you have seen and heard a short history of Prairie Public. Watched it grow from KFME, a single station, into a multimedia organization that educates, involves, and inspires the people of North Dakota, Montana, Minnesota, South Dakota, and Manitoba. As a nonprofit, we have depended heavily upon you, our members, our corporate underwriters, and our program partners. Thank you. This is your Prairie Public. Happy 50th anniversary.
This program is funded by the members of Prairie Public.